Hello, I'm Benjamin Towles. I'm here to give my Vanquisher deck profile. I took first with Team Overtriggers for the win at Rosemont, Illinois' Bushi Road Springfest. And I guess we'll just get straight into it. Starting with the grade 3s, I run 4 Draconic Vanquisher full Brontos. He is definitely going to be your main win condition for the deck, allowing you to attack more than once each turn with your Vanguard. Idealistically, you'll swing with either a Draconic Vanquisher full Bronto or a Draconic Vanquisher on your Vanguard circle, and then you will bind him with many of the bindable units or units that allow binding throughout the deck, and then allowing you to reride him and get an additional swing from him. 4, in my opinion, is the number you want to shoot for. I know some people will cut him down to 3 to make room for other options. He's the main target you want to see. If you're running 3 and you end up with 1 in damage, you're down to 2 already, and the likelihood of you pulling him off multiple times in game is drastically reduced, so I run him at the full 4. Alright, with that out of the way, your main ride target that you want to at least ride once per game, just because I believe that his continuous ability is better and easier to pull off. Full Bronto is just a win play, so if you're riding Full Bronto at the start of turn, that plus 10k is only going to be for the units that are already there. His is a continuous, so you don't necessarily need to re-ride him multiple times, but you want him to be at least your first ride target, idealistically. The reason why only 3 is you need room for other options. You really only need to see the 1, and this deck has so many ways to search out grade 3s, specifically Vanquisher units, that just the 1, that running 1 less of him, you can get away with it. And then the main unit that you want for binding is Jaggy Shot Dragoon. If they have no units in the front row, which 99.9% of the time they won't, Stunverse is going to do its job. Also, it binds off of its own ability, and you have other binding units as well. You can draw a card, so you get to bind one of their units in the front row, and then draw a card if after that unit has been bound, they no longer have any units in the front row. And then additionally, at the end of the battle that it attacks, you can put into the soul and draw a card. So it is no longer a target to be retired or bound itself, and then it gets you another plus, and it adds up to your soul. Now moving into the grade 2s, we're going to start with 4 copies of Rock Climb Dragoon. The reason why I like 4 copies of him, as opposed to some of the other grade 2s that bind, is I like the fact that he retires himself at the end, and then that allows him to not be a target to be bound by anything else, at least at that moment. It's just left off the field, and he allows you to draw a card. He allows you to bind. So he's good filtering. He keeps the engine running. And then 4 Demonic Dragon Berserker Chatara. He's going to be one of your number 1 bind targets, other than Full Bronto. His ability is when he's bound, you can call him from the bind zone, and he gets plus 10,000 until end of turn. Also, if he hits, you can Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. He is just a very fearsome target to be bound. And one play that I really like to do with him includes Draconic Vanquisher. Draconic Vanquisher's ability, Counterblast 1, choose one of any player's front row rear guards and bind it. If your soul has a grade 3, you and your opponent choose a card from their hands and bind it. This is a good target for that. So your opponent's going to lose a card. You're going to bind this and then call it. It's going to gain the plus 10. It's going to have the plus 10 from him, and you plussed while your opponent minused. And then the last grade 2 that I run is 3 copies of Voltic Shred Dragon. I know a lot of people are running the Barca promo, and I've actually gotten some questions about that. And one of the reasons why I don't is because Barca, you bind after you draw, and with Voltic Shed Dragon, you're able to draw before you bind. So this can give you an option to bind. So you can draw first and then choose something to bind. And there were several times throughout the Springfest tournament or just in games that I've played that I drew into a Chatara or a full Bronto, and then when I didn't originally have it in hand, draw into it, then bind it, then activate skill. And so it can give you a better way to play out your turns and get a little lucky. Alright, now into the grade 1s. We will start with the 4 ofs. Guess we'll start with 4 Chain Bolt Dragoon. He's going to be your main grade 1 ride target. You're going to want to ride into him because he allows you to check the top 7 cards of your deck for a Vanquisher, add it to hand. So that's it's another consistency piece. And then it's also a bind target. If it is bound, it can be called. Then I had been running 4 Eradicator Demolition Dragons. I love how it's also a good ride target. I mean, if you're going second, you can go ride Demolition Dragon, call one behind. That's a threat in 2 draw, and I pulled that off before. And it's also really good on rearguard too. I mean, if you put it on an Excel 2 marker, it's 13. If you have the plus 10, it's 23, threat in a draw. But I actually would cut this down to 3 and make room for a 4th Mighty Bolt Dragoon. You want to be searching out your grade 3 targets. Adding a Jaggy shot to hand, another full Pronto, or just another unit that could be pitched to stride is too good in my opinion. So I would personally bump Mighty Bolt Dragoon up to 4, which I'm going to do. But this is just the list that I took to Springfest and won with. And also, he's really good because he gains 5k if you bound that turn, which he will be every turn. So you put him on Excel 2, he's 18k on his own. And then if you have the plus 10, he's 28. And then if he's on a Excel 1 marker, I mean, that's 33. So, I mean, he's just a good unit that allows you to search out cards, or search out grade 3 specifically, and then he swings for good numbers. Now moving on to the triggers. I do play the 4 Heal Guardians. The ability's too good, in my opinion, not to run. I just like how it allows you to not get, out aggroed when you're only on grade 2. For Rumble Dagger Draco Kid, striding is important. Three Dragon Dancer Paulinas. The move into Soul and get 10k is good. Also drawing a card. And then I do run the 4 Wyvern Guard Golds. This deck does draw quite a bit. This is just extra toppings on the Sunday. You could go the full crit variant and run the grade 1 PGs. The reason I didn't run the grade 1 PGs is whenever I drew into a unit card, I wanted it to be a card that I could call with and be aggressive with. I'm a very aggressive player, and if I draw into a unit, I don't want it to just sit idly in my hand until the time that it could come up. If the meta really shifts, where a lot of people are having like units and stride abilities that restrict grade 0s from being guarded with, and it's more of a grade 1 meta, I will switch back. But right now it's kind of open-ended, and these still do their job. And then the 1 over trigger. Why would you not run this? It can completely save you in so many situations. They do need to be banned in my opinion, but we went with the name Overtriggers for the win, just as a memey, jokey way to luck sack our way into first place, and it kind of paid off. I'd say the Overtrigger helped me out in about 5 matches, so that's kind of prevalent. So yeah, they do need to go, but they are good, so why not run them? Alright, now getting into the G zone. We'll start with the #1 MVP, and honestly the reason why Narukami is meta. Stun vs. Dragon. I know it might be an elitist thing to say, but you cannot run Narukami without stun verse. You have to have this. You can run it at 2. I typically only go into 2, but there's been times where I have gone into the 3rd. I wouldn't ever see needing a 4th though. Then I do run 2 copies of V-Buster. Sometimes your opponent will try and play around you and they won't call units, so they'll have nothing on the field and nothing in their drop for the first turn that you stride. Then that would be a wasted stun verse if you went into stun verse. So this guy is still a good unit to go into for first stride, but he's also just flip fodder for stun verse if you never go into him. I also really like his GB3, because if you flip the first one and you don't have the second one, well, GB3, if that's active and your Thunder Strike 7, meaning you have 7 of their cards in bind, then all your front row units get plus 5k, and this unit gets +1 crit, +1 drive, and that's still really threatening if you don't have any other better options. I do run the Drachma, and I also run the Progenitor Dragon. These won't come up too often, but like once out of every 10 games, you'll go into one or the other. They're just good options to have. I do run the VMAX. This is also something that won't come up too often, but if they're at 5 damage and they don't have very many rear guards, or if any, it's just a fun way to just pick off your opponent, especially if they have a big hand and you know they have perfect guards. You can just be like, hey, here's your 6 damage. Also, the GB8. I typically go into the GB8 in the mirror match. The mirror match, for some weird reason, goes on long enough, we're flipping enough, that I've actually gone into this the most in the mirror match. But it's also something that won't come up too often, but you should run it, in my opinion, because I have gone into it, and it has gotten me game every time I've gone into it. Then I do run 3 of the Voltage. This is actually kind of a mistake. It should only be 2, and this should be a Brahma. But so I kind of just use the extra one as flip fodder, but it will be the Brahma G guard here very soon. And then speaking of G guards, we've got 2 Bulwarks. A lot of times they just end up as flip fodder for Impede, because Impede's really the real MVP for G guards. But if you meet the condition of the Thunder Strike 3, it's a 25k shield, which is really good. And then MP Dragon just completely dunks on your opponent's turns. It's always funny to see them have some rear guards that are going to swing face or swing for game, and you just force them to get rid of them. It's also really funny, like when they're swinging with their last unit and that's all they have, and it's like 80k double crit, and you're just like, no, get rid of it.
Sorry.
And that's pretty much my deck profile. Coming at you from Draw 2 Cards. If you want to check them out, they're the local shop that we frequent for Vanguard and all your Vanguard needs. And like I said, the only changes I would make is I'd bump Mighty Bolt Dragoon up to 3, cutting Demolition, or up to 4, cutting Demolition to 3, and then I would cut the 1 Voltage for a Brahma.